Hello again, this is Doug, the 2-Minute Gardener. Today we're going to talk about walls. 40 different wall ideas for your landscape remodel. This covers everything from retaining walls to border walls to seating walls to walls for raised vegetable beds. We're going to look at the different materials available for building those kinds of walls. So this is both for front yard and backyard, as you're about to see with all these different examples. So let's get started. First up are Keystone Block walls. Now, a Keystone Block wall, like these Country Manor walls or Bellegarde walls, are walls that actually stack on top of each other. They are not mortared in with concrete, they are stacked. Now, a lot of times they are epoxied in place, so they're very, very solid, and you can still build walls up to 6 feet with Keystone walls. You can actually build them even higher. There's commercial grade Keystone to go really high, as you've probably seen around on freeways and other parts of your community. I'm talking about the basic Keystone that's designed to go up to 6 feet for residential use. And these are some different examples of those kind of walls. And like I said, great for terracing. This is a terraced vegetable garden, raised vegetable garden. I like to do these at 14 inches because that also doubles as a seating wall. So that's kind of a nice combination. Or you can also just do seating walls. Again, seating walls are generally 14 to 18 inches in height, and they're really nice. You can also use Keystone for border walls to kind of establish rooms, as well as stabilize patios when they're on little slopes or slight elevations, as you see in these examples. And then finally, you can do smaller ones just to kind of flatten out areas for little planting beds around the property. So let's look at how a Keystone wall gets put together. Now, all walls start with a good footing. Now, every state has slightly different regulations on the size footing needed for these kind of walls that are considered retaining walls. They're holding soil back. So make sure you check your local building codes for what is required. You can, for small walls, you can do like they did in this job, where they have compacted gravel as the footing, and they bury that base course. It is unbelievably important that you use Keystone block that is rated for the height wall you want to. There are small little walls, as you're going to see later in this video, and then there's this one, the really heavy-duty 10-inch Country Manor that he's using, which is rated for above 3 feet. Now, the other nice thing about some Keystone, like this Country Manor, is that you can pin it together, and it has these pins to add even more stability. And like you see there, he's pinning it together and adding the epoxy to really key it together. So these walls can be used without rebar reinforcement, but notice they do have the center holes to run rebar through that. If you're doing a Keystone wall like this, you want to use rebar if you're going above 3 feet, and then you do need to do concrete footings to bury it in. All right, once you do a Keystone wall, you want to put a cap on it. Lots of different options. Country Manor Keystone does come with available caps to cap it all off, and you just use your masonry saw to make those final little cuts. Again, epoxy it in, so you'll measure twice, cut once, and measure it again before you glue the sucker in. So this particular job, that's what the before looked like. It was just kind of a mishmash. And after, now with this wonderful Country Manor Keystone wall, it's a much cleaner look, really improved the home value here. And it's created these nice flat beds for this rose garden that was just planted. I'm sure these roses look just fabulous now that it's springtime. So here's a couple more examples of different kinds of Keystone walls. Again, there are links in the video description and the comment section for more information about these materials. Different kinds of Country Manor that we use to create flat areas, using them as retaining walls. And again, here's another example, really elegant front yard we did using that Keystone to create a really inviting, wonderful environment for the front of this house. Vegetable beds, raised beds, how to get from A to B. This is another nice example of just creating a flat space for those kind of things. And not all of the Keystone has to be fancy. This is the Keystone from Home Depot, the regular garden Keystone. And this is actually my rose garden. But there's lots of different types of Keystone. All right, now let's go on to the second major category of walls out there, and those are CMU block walls. So CMU stands for Concrete Masonry Unit, and it's just these big, heavy block walls that are a little more sturdy They are concrete mortared in place. So you have concrete and then mortar that goes in place to really lock these babies in. So there's a little less flexibility. Once it's in, it's really in. You're going to have to take a jackhammer to get these guys out. But you can still do all kinds of beautiful types of walls, as you're going to see shortly in this video. And the way these are put together, as you see, is the guys are mortaring it on place. Notice all the rebar, because these are bigger walls. Obviously, these walls are going to be about 4 to 5 feet high. They are going to be reinforced with the rebar and really big footings. And so that's really important if you're doing a big retaining wall. Another thing that's important is notice that black material he's painting on the backside. That is water sealant. So the idea with these big retaining walls is, because they don't have the seams that a keystone wall is, you want to make sure the backs of the walls are properly sealed so water is forced to go straight down. At the bottom of these little beds, and you can't quite see it in this shot, there are little drains to drain the water out. So French drains are really important on all kinds of keystone walls. Going back to the concrete block wall, this is one that's a nice perimeter wall we did with a little bit of Talavera tile there in around there. And again, this is a different example of using CMU block walls to create a retaining wall. These all have a stucco facade on them with a nice little paver cap in the example of this particular patio. And the idea here is we wanted to create a raised patio that creates its own wonderful little room. And notice we also use the Keystone to create these wonderful beds on the perimeter. Even though it is a concrete masonry unit, you can still do some wonderful curves. As you see, we kind of wrapped it around this existing fountain to create a really inviting space with some unusual curves in this particular game. Also, don't forget to add some lights to those walls. Here's some examples of built-in LED lights to light that baby up at night. Now, this particular one, it doubled as both a retaining wall to create this patio, and we created a bench. And the top of that bench, in case you're wondering, is poured in place concrete, nice with a nice color that matches the stucco finish. Some walls are done with thinner block. This is a 6-inch block. Another example of using concrete masonry units is you can do some fencing on top of it. If you're trying to flatten out a patio and create some privacy, you can use some nice wood fencing with some good stain, or you can use glass panels. These plexiglass panels create a lovely view with a nice wall that has flattened it out. Let's talk about stone facade on a concrete block. So this house had an old brick facade on it, and I wanted to match it. So after a lot of shopping, I finally found the brick facade, and it's just thin set facade. It's very thin. You see how the guys mortar it in place to create this wonderful finished old world look. There are lots of different facades out there. Eldorado is one of the leading manufacturers in America of stone facade for walls. Here's a nice example of mixing the two. We have the stucco finish on the wall and then the nice stone facade around the pillar. Here is a lot of stone facade on this retaining wall to create a nice ambience. But like I said, there are links in the comment section on all these different kinds of facades. You are starting to drive the price up when you're dealing with a new retaining wall with stone facade. You're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $80 a square foot. So it can get pricey. Going back to some simple type of walls, these are some nice seating walls that was same concept, concrete masonry unit, curved it around, did a nice little wall cap. This one was a little memorial I did for a church. Now, another type of wall, it's not really a concrete wall, but I thought it important to include in this particular video. These are called concrete stem walls. Now, a concrete stem wall is just poured in place concrete, usually no more than 12 inches high, designed to create a little barrier, a little retaining wall area, just something to kind of flatten it out and create dirt from going onto a patio. So if you have a really short need, less than 12 inches, consider doing just a poured in place concrete stem wall. Finally, one more example, two more examples to show you. They now made really interesting corrugated metal material for building retaining walls. So that's also something to consider depending on the look you're going for. You can do some kind of cool, interesting metal finish. There is material out there depending on where you live. Finally, the last kind of wall is what I call dry stack walls. Now, a couple examples of a dry stack wall are boulders. There's one we did to create a flattened area to put a putting green in. These boulders are, for the most part, just gravity stacked. The smaller rocks are epoxied in to hold this whole wall nice nicely in place. Another example of a dry stack wall is this. This is patio cut flagstone, and it's kind of curved and chipped to make a really interesting finished seating wall that is also kind of an interesting architectural element to the front yard. So this is a different way to include walls in your finished product. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to get more of my videos to help you with your landscape. This is Doug, the 2-Minute Gardener, saying thanks so much for watching.